Good evening, everyone. I'm Deputy Mayor Mary Dunniam, and I'm sitting in the chair for Mayor Robbie Walsh, who's away this evening. I welcome all of you. It's lovely to see so many in the gallery. I declare the meeting open at 6:06. And as I said, I have welcomed you all, and in accordance with Council Policy GOV 017, digital recording of council meetings, to record meetings of council, to assist in the preparation of minutes, and to allow live streaming of council meetings. So there is a digital live recording tonight. I would also like to acknowledge country. I will begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Tomagina people, and to pay our respect to those that have passed before us, their history and their culture. To begin, record of attendance, leave of absence 1.3, Mayor Robbie Walsh, as I have indicated, he's away. Thank you, Mr. GM. We also have an apology from Councillor Fairbrother for this evening. Item 2, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. So there is a recommendation before the councillors. Could I have a mover, please, of that motion? Councillor Hyland moved, seconder Councillor Courtney. All those in favour? Sorry, before I get that far, I need to determine if there are any amendments or queries in terms of the agenda.
I did have one. I'm pretty sure I asked in the last meeting, did Mayor Walsh believe it was inappropriate, and will he withdraw the advertisement for Gavin Pearce? And I note there's no response there.
Through you, Chair, no response in the minutes you're referring to, Councillor Courtney? Yeah, often if questions are asked and answered at the meeting, they're not necessarily placed in the minutes. If there's a question asked that is outstanding or as part of debate, they won't be recorded in the minutes.
I think he gave me a justification, but not a response as to whether he was going to withdraw it and whether he stood by it. He just gave me a justification for why he thought it was okay at the time. It was my understanding.
Yeah, I'll note that and have a look back at the minutes. Thank you, Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. GM. Also included in the recommendation, the motion to accept late reports. There were three reports, so the motion also included.
No, that's a separate motion.
Okay, obviously I've lost practice, haven't I? The first one is to accept the minutes. So the only query is from Councillor Courtney. Councillor Bramage, do you have?
I was just going to say aye.
Thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. The second motion is that Council, in accordance with Section 8(6) of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, accept the following late reports. There are three there: Agenda Item 9.19, Agenda Item 9.2 and Agenda Item 9.21. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move with that.
Councillor Edwards.
So move.
And a seconder,
Second.
Councillor Bramage. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Declarations of interest, there are nil. Item 4, councillors' announcements and report announcements by the Mayor. None have been received. The Mayor's communications, there is a list there. And I have a recommendation that Council note the Mayor's communications. Could I have a mover, please?
So moved.
Councillor Hyland moved, seconded Councillor Bramage. Are there any, I'm afraid I'm not able to answer any queries around the Mayor's communications, so I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. Reports by delegates, nil have been received. Item 4.4, notification of council workshops. The recommendation is that the council note the following workshops. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Courtney moved. Seconder.
Second.
Councillor Highland. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. We're moving on to item 5, public questions and statements. 5.1, responses to public questions taken on notice from the previous meeting. 5.1.1, Kay Nichols, Camp Creek, there has been a question and the officer's response. And 5.1.2, Mrs. Schultz about biodiversity. And the questions have been answered in the agenda. 5.2, our public questions received in writing. We have one from Mr. J. Powell of Waratah Community Board, and he's asking, please advise when and how the next Waratah Community Board election will be held and what are the criteria for an individual to be appointed. The officers have provided a very lengthy response to Mr. Powell. Public questions without notice. Thank you. I'm glad I've got the General Manager here to remind me what I need to be doing tonight. The Council encourages community participation in its meetings through the opportunity for public questions and statements. Consistent with Council's core values, councillors and staff strive to ensure all people are treated with courtesy, fairness, dignity and respect. We expect our residents and ratepayers to apply similar standards in their dealings with Council. As Deputy Mayor, it is my responsibility to maintain the orderly conduct of Council meetings and to determine whether a question or statement is out of order due to the use of offensive, objectionable or defamatory expressions. I ask members of the public to show proper consideration and courtesy in their comments. Thank you. Mrs. Schultz, would you like to come forward with your questions?
For listening to me. Is it on? Yeah. My questions relate to the argument to preserve existing mature trees in Wynyard and their tree hollows. It's incredibly important for biodiversity that branches with tree hollows are maintained in situ on mature trees. Tree hollows support 15% of animal species for the life cycle of shelter, over 20 species in Wynyard. You've all received a document from me and I hope you get around to reading it. There's a lot more detail in that document. So if you include us humans, we rely on mature trees for fresh air, shade and our well-being and sense of place. Any amount of tree planting today will not replace the loss of trees cut down today. Even though man-made structures have tried to replicate tree hollows, they are limited because they do not know enough about the species to know how to make the tree hollows. With Wynyard's ICE action plan, it's populated with words about climate change, biodiversity and sustainability. So maintaining trees in situ help to mitigate climate change and the loss of biodiversity. A study in 2022 tells us that Australia is losing 30% of its residential trees from urban development, and you'll see more on that in Appendix B. A lot of it has to do with litigation. So when you look at figures like in 159 years, there's been an estimated 328 deaths from tree failure, then you compare that to road deaths in 1 year alone, 1,137, and more alarmingly, hospitalisation due to road injury, 39,755. So I have two questions. Will Waratah Wynyard Council consider to include a mandate in their local planning scheme to retain old trees in their surrounding shrubbery and grasses in the residential zone envelopes to preserve what is left? And my other question, does Waratah Wynyard Council have a significant tree or remnant forest register to protect these important aspects of our urban environment? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Schultz. Mr. Thornton, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. I can respond to the first question. With regards to the planning scheme, there are no provisions as per the request just raised then. Council's scheme that's currently out for advertising was a transition from the current scheme to the new version of the Tasmanian planning scheme. But as it is currently out for community consultation, I would strongly recommend that you lodge a submission to request any additions that you would like to see within that scheme. So now would be the time to do that. I believe the consultation ends at the end of next week, so still got some time to get in. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Summers will respond to the second question.
Yep, thanks through you, Deputy Mayor. There isn't a council-owned significant tree register. We do have access to various layers of information via the list website, but we don't hold a register of significant trees at this point in time.
Thank you. Maureen Corbett, you have a question. Two questions by the what you've provided.
Yes, thank you. Good evening all. I was heartened to hear what you said about respect, and that I read it down the stairs at council, and I quote, "People are heard, valued and respected, and council is fair and equitable." I was at a rally on Saturday where over 400 concerned locals stood in the wind and rain in a rally to save Bass Strait. There were commercial fishers and tourist industry representatives who stand to lose their livelihoods. There were surfers, there were boating enthusiasts, everybody was there. There were people worried about animal welfare, and there were people just worried about the despoiling of our beaches. I would like to ask Council, is Council willing to represent the residents and ratepayers in discussions on the subject of fish farms in Bass Strait? And my second question is, has Council attended any forums or briefings by the state government and or proponents of the fish farming industry who propose to come up to the northwest coast, or received any donations or similar from them, or invited presentations from those on the other side?
Through you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Corbett. We had very similar questions at the last council meeting, provided in writing. The questions were asked for us in writing, to which we responded, and you'll find those responses in the minutes of that particular meeting. Yeah, so I'm more than happy. I will certainly pull that information together and forward that to you. And be more than happy to do that. But essentially, Council hasn't formed a position on this particular subject at the moment. But in relation to your question around forums and briefings and Council's involvement or otherwise in that space, that's certainly addressed in that response. So I'll make sure that's forwarded to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Corbett, and thank you, Mr. GM. Mr. Hutchison, you have a statement or question for us, so if you would come forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Evening, councillors. My question is for the Mayor, who's absent tonight, but I will ask it, and appreciate a response on taking on notice. So, Mayor, did you consult with fellow councillors or the broader community before you associated the Waratah Wynyard brand as being supportive of the Liberal candidate for the federal election, Gavin Pearce? And do you think it is a good precedent to set for this council for a mayor to be in paid advertisements for political organisations and political parties? That's my first question. And my second question is for another councillor who's absent tonight. So Councillor Fairbrother, you have been sentenced for a criminal offence. You state you are reviewing your position on council. When will this review be complete? What do you say to this municipality? And in regards to the offence you were charged with, indecent exposure, was it an isolated incident, or have you engaged in this type of activity in the past? I just want to make a note of on public record that in about halfway through last year, I actually suggested to Councillor Fairbrother that there would be a lot of media focus on his case. But in the sentencing, somehow the media attention is somehow a punishment for him, knowing that full well that was coming his direction once he pleaded not guilty. The magistrate didn't believe his case, and I'm just wondering how the community should respond to him remaining in his position. So I address all councillors. The council's reputation is being slightly hammered in the media by the actions of certain councillors. So as a resident and ratepayer of this municipality, I wish to express serious concerns about the motivation of Councillor Walsh and Councillor Fairbrother for being on this council from this point forward. I don't think they are putting the municipality first and foremost. I think they're putting their own needs and position before the community. So I'd like to ask them to have a look in the mirror and ask themselves, who am I representing? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchison. Mrs. Raw, you have a statement to make. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having me here, councillors. I've sent my notes to you, but remarkably it was only 4:30. But so if you want to look at my notes later, I'm not going to go into everything. But just briefly outline a few things. The use of the Doctors' Rocks Conservation Area has been in debate for nearly 2.5 years now. And I think the group, or I know the group MUCA-DR, are in support of penguins to the nth degree. And as a group, we would be very disturbed if any penguins were killed by rogue dog attacks. We really support the total dog ban for the area from Seabrook Creek to Doctors' Rocks. And that's been in place for many years, and we totally support that. But the off-leash area that we've had until the 2.5 years ago has never had an attack on penguins in that area. So that's why we question what's happening. So anyway, you know that we missed the consultation and we were asked to consult with Parks and Wildlife. We did that. We thought we'd got the collaboration up, but that didn't happen. So then we put the thing to council in November about having a consultation or trying to sort this issue out and having a small group. And we did meet on the four occasions and things like that. But the main goal of it was shared usage of the area, and that right from the start wasn't going to happen because it became really obvious right from the start that there were two opposing views. And the first view was that in no way can any dog be on a beach without having a significant effect on penguins and cause the rogue dog attacks, compared to our opinion where with responsible dog owners, we believe that the discussed part of beach will have no effect on the penguin colony. And that's been shown by many years that we've been using the beach and that there's never been an attack on penguins. But I think it came down to two beliefs, and I think they're around beliefs and values. And I think you can't change beliefs and values. We stuck to our beliefs and values, and so did the opposing group. And the data that was presented didn't help us change those beliefs and values either. It's a very significant thing to change your beliefs and values. You'd know that significant life experiences are probably the things that only make you change your belief and value. Now, I'd change my belief and value about that beach if there was a significant attack on the penguins. Certainly I would, because I don't want that to happen. But with the data that came in, particularly from Parks and Wildlife, and I've put it, I won't go through it all, but I've put what I believe about that data, but a lot of it didn't even come into consideration with the beach that we're talking about. And even the ones about the CSIRO document that was on modelling of dog attacks actually proved that our case was positive, not theirs, because they were saying things like that small groups had to be attacked at least 15 times in 50 years before it would have an effect on a community of penguins, and medium-large colonies were only at risk of collapse if the frequency was 20 attacks in 50 years, and there have been none on that beach. So, and there was data put forward about the shorebird birds in that data. They didn't say specifically that dogs cause for lower shorebird numbers, but they said things like residential build-up, other feral animals, beach erosions, all have effect on birds on the beach. So it didn't even point to dogs. So look, I could go on and on about the data, and I've put that in my notes. But the other thing that happened in the data was the major goal of exploring the shared usage was difficult to keep to, and other data came in that was just anti-dog data, and stating things like people like that beach being dog-free now because they can have nice walks on that beach, and we don't want dogs on that beach. So it moved away from the joint usage. So in the agenda for tonight, in the meeting, it said that it recommended that the council take the current dog management policy to community consultation, and I believe you're going to vote on that. Look, I believe you're in a really difficult position if that's the way forward, because the two opposing groups have two opposing opinions and they're not going to change. I've said what the opinions are. With community consultation, I think it'll just mean that each group will go out to strive to get their numbers. If the penguin group come up with 500 signatures, our group, Mooka, will come up with 550. Then they'll go back and get 600, and we'll come back with 650. It'll just go on around numbers, around something that we're really opposing on. It will just go on, and it'll just pit two sorts of people against each other. And as I said at our meetings, people that walk dogs are nice people. We don't want penguins to be killed. People who support penguins are nice people too. You know, you're pitting two types of people in society against each other, and I don't think it's good, because we come out feeling battered and bruised as we pit against each other. So who's going to make the final decision anyway about the beach? Is it the Waratah Wynyard Council or Parks and Wildlife? So we're asking now that maybe the best way forward is just make the decision, and we will all have to abide by it and agree by it. And if it goes against us, we know that Parks and Wildlife have the power over us to make this decision. And we know that by standing up, our power is diminished, and we don't have power because Parks and Wildlife are one of the people that will tell you or may even make the decision. So we're expecting that Parks and Wildlife will say you don't get back on the beach. But going back, and we would live by that if that happened, because really basically we're sick of the fight. We're sick of knowing that whatever we do will be just one-upped by Parks and Wildlife or whoever. It'll just go on forever. But having said that, we tried to put compromise to the meetings all the time, and it was difficult. Compromise just wasn't on the agenda, as I said before, but we want to say that this is our compromise to the council. We want you to reinstate the area between Gate 1, not Seabrook Creek, and it is on your map, Gate 1, because we acknowledge that there are more penguins between Gate 1 and Seabrook Creek. We want to have it reinstated between Gates 1 and 3 and block off the usage of Gate 2, that there should be significant signage put up, and on that there should be, this is a penguin sensitive area. Access times are 1 hour after sunrise, 1 hour after sunrise, yes, and 1 hour before sunset, so we don't cross over with the penguin times. Your dogs must be on a leash from the car to the beach, so they don't have the risk of getting into the bushes. You mustn't let your dog off the leash until you get as close to the water as possible. And dogs definitely must not go into the shrubbery. You must pick up after your dog and dispose in the bins provided, if they could be provided. And discourage your dog from approaching walkers without dogs, because that's been one thing coming through, that people don't like dogs and being approached by dogs. And we're saying that the area would be assessed for usage each time the dog management policy is reviewed by the Waratah Wynyard Council. And of course, if there was an attack on the penguins by rogue dogs, not by our dogs, by rogue dogs, very different things, that yes, we would definitely walk away from it. So that's where we stand, and that's where we feel after the 2.5 years. But one thing that came up too, I think it should be noted that the ban on the usage of the beach is not only for dogs, it's for all animals. Now, I'm aware that the mayor rides his horse on the beach there, so evidently all that has to stop, that no animal can be on that beach anymore. So anyway, so that's where we're at from the Mooka DR people. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Rule. Mr. Ewington, you have a statement. You've actually asked a question. Is Somerset being left behind? And I guess statement, as I was about to say, you have asked a question, and I guess you are going to make a statement about that question. Thank you. Please come forward.
what it can provide, where the accommodation is, what to see and what to do. I feel people these days, they do the homework before they leave home, not actually come and then look around at things. And I feel that's an important thing this day and age, because people are on a short time frame of travelling and they want to get as much in as possible, so they go on the website or whatever and look at what's available. And I feel there's many improvements in that field which will benefit Somerset and other members, townships of Wynyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Ewington. And as a councillor from Somerset, it is my place, best place on earth as far as I'm concerned. I value your comments, and I thank all of the gallery that have provided comments and asked questions tonight, the statements, and you've given us your views on many things. The council does appreciate the opportunity to hear what you've got to say. Mr Jeam, did you wish to respond to any of that, or no? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to item 6, the Planning Authority, and at 6:37 we will go into the Planning Authority. Item 6.3, application for planning scheme amendment, PSA 1/2021 for 15275 Bass Highway, Somerset, and 55 Mackays Road, Somerset. The recommendation that the Planning Authority direct the Manager, Development and Regulatory Services to provide the statement of opinion for PSA 1/2021 as attached to the Tasmanian Planning Commission in accordance with S39(2) on the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. Could I please have a mover?
I'll move and second that.
The mover is Councillor Courtney and seconder is Councillor Edwards. Councillor Courtney, do you wish to discuss or... Thank you. Any other councillor have any other comments that they wish to make? Councillor Hyland.
Madam Chair, yeah, it was more or less a bit of a tidy up around there, and if people are familiar with the site, it's where the Seabrook Hotel's on. And there's been a drain running north-south or south-north that's been there, and nobody seemed to claim it for a long time, and that's been tidied up in the parcel as well. So we've done our bit, and it's been passed on now to where it needs to go.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. If there are no more speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? No one's against. Carried unanimously. Item 6.4, Centre Pit Expansion and South Deposit Backfill at Mine Road, Savage River Mine, DA 216/2021. The recommendation is that Council, in accordance with Section 51 and Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Waratah Wynyard Interim Planning Scheme 2013, approve Centre Pit Expansion and South Deposit Backfill at Mine Road, Savage River, subject to the following conditions. And there are 5 conditions. I'm not going to read those out. Could I please have a mover for that particular?
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you. Councillor Hyland has moved.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Bramage. Councillor Hyland, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, there's not much on that now, because it should be noted that this application has been assessed by the EPA, who have jurisdiction for environmental matters of an application of this scale, and they have advised the application has taken sufficient measures and can be approved with conditions, which our council has put those 5 conditions on.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Councillor Bradley.
Yes, Madam Chairman. I'm speaking for the motion. The mine is bordered to the north and south by an informal reserve identified as a production forest managed by the Department of or DPIPWI. The mine reserve is bordered to the west by the Donaldson River Nature Reserve area and to the east by the Meredith Range Regional Reserve. The Savage River Reserve is located 10 kilometres away. The proposed works are not hazardous according to the planning scheme. The only hazardous substance would relate to acid mine drainage. It is not the first time a tailings dam has failed in Tasmania, causing untold environmental damage. There would be also 109.69 acres of native vegetation will be impacted, and I am especially concerned for the native wildlife. According to the EPA, have conditions on the permit for environmental matters, such as retain all waste on site and not polluting the waterways. They are in control of the situation. According to the EIS, there is a low likelihood for environmental harm. I would like to see more monitoring of the environment around the reserve of the Donaldson River and the Meredith Range areas, but I am in favour of the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Are there any more speakers? Councillor Bramage.
Thank you. I can't let this go. It's second in the motion. I fully support it. Savage River, I guess it was built middle to late 60s, I would say. And it was expected to be a lifespan of 10 to 15 years then. Well, we're still going. It's had its ups and downs. It's been fantastic for Tasmania as well as our region. So I just urge council to support this planning permit because it's been a great little money spinner, if that's the right word, for a lot of people and employed a lot of people. They've even going underground now, which is, look, it's fantastic that we can get this lifespan out of this mine. So I just urge councillors to fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. Are there any speakers against the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No one's against. Carried unanimously. The Planning Authority is now closed at 6:44. We move on to item 7, matters raised by councillors, responses to councillors' question taken on notice from the previous meeting, and you can see there that I posed a question around building infringements, and a considerable amount of information has been provided by the council officers. I would like to ask a subsequent question, if I may, Mr. GM.
Not at this time.
Not at this time, fair enough.
Chair, you can ask that in the question section, should you wish.
Thank you. I'm glad you're keeping me on track.
So, excuse me, so we can't ask any questions regarding this item at the moment. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Chair?
Pardon me. When we get to councillors' questions without notice, which is item 7.3, I stuffed that up, so there you go. 7.1.2, Councillor Highland, parking signs. You asked a question and there is a response there for you as well. You happy with that?
So, excuse me, has that got to wait too? I'm still learning.
The meeting procedures haven't changed for 4 years, so this isn't any different to any other meeting.
Enough enjoyment in the meeting. 7.2, councillors' questions received in writing. We have none, and councillor questions without notice, and I will get in first, if I may, Mr. GM. Just subsequent to the first question that I had asked for at the last meeting, I ask if we can have a list of planning infringements and associated costs for the last financial year. So it's slightly different to building infringements. So I just need to also have that information on the planning infringements. And I'll take that on notice if I may.
Yeah, we certainly, through you, Chair, we can pull that information together for future meeting. Yes, that's a very good point. How far back would you like that information to go? That was probably something that was absent from this particular one.
For the last financial year, if I could have it, please. So.
Yep. Current financial year and last?
Yes. All right then. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Done. Yeah.
Do you have a question as well?
I do, and it's a follow-up question to the one that I believe I asked last month. Now, my understanding was I thought I had asked clearly, did Mayor Walsh think it was appropriate what he did, and would he withdraw it? In light of the fact that I don't feel that there's a response there, and obviously there's no regret from Mayor Walsh, I'd like to follow up with another question. And just I would like to make it clear that the reason I'm asking is because if I was the mayor and I said my mate Craig should be elected, or my mate Chris Lynch should be elected, I think you should put Mr Garland in. It would be completely inappropriate because I would be speaking on behalf of council with my opinion. All through the ad, Mayor Walsh says my mate Gav, which I think means that he's doing it on behalf of a friend and not on behalf of council, therefore using mayor was completely inappropriate. My question tonight would be, do we need to consider a policy, because we've set a precedent that I believe is completely inappropriate, that nobody should be doing advertisements in the mayoral role or in fact in the council's role, because we are here to act on behalf of our community, not on behalf of political parties. So I will reiterate, I am very, very, very angry that this has happened, and that this has happened 2 months out from an election, and that by the time we deal with this, the damage is done. I believe that this is the worst government we've ever had, and this should have been addressed well and truly before this, or we should have had a heads up of what the mayor was doing as the mayor, because the excuse that there's 4 Robbie Walshes in Google was just pathetic. So do we need to look at a policy to make sure this doesn't happen again because of this precedent that's been set?
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Bramich, you also have a question.
Yeah, I do, Madam Deputy, is regarding the question you asked for the infringements. I know some go back to 2017 and 18. They will all eventually get resolved, I guess, will they? Or not? That's what, maybe the question you asked earlier with your planning one should go back a few more years. I don't know.
And you're directing the question to whom?
Oh, whoever's going to answer it.
Mr.
Someone
GM.
up that end of the table.
Through you, Chair, I'm not quite clear on the question, but if the question is will these matters be followed up, well, they're on the list to follow up, and obviously there's some actions being taken, but because there are many matters on there, and they're all, I guess, at very different stages, but by very virtue of the fact they're on the list means that we are taking some action in that case.
Yeah, that's fine. Happy with that. I guess the other question, can I ask the other one now, or do you want to let someone else have a crack?
You finished with one question, you'd like to ask another?
Yeah, I'd like to one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Councillor Hyland with the line marking in Goldie Street. That problem has been fixed, I believe. It's been took from one side of the road, how I've seen it for the last couple of weeks, to the other side of the road. It's been transferred from one side to the other. The reason I say that is there's cars parking near where the trucks fill up from the water station. And you get a semi coming in there, they probably haven't got quite enough room, or they've got to drive up to this car and load and then back. And we have created the problem by putting the yellow line there and put the problem on the other side of the road. So I just don't know what we do. Maybe we should have to get Taswater to move their filling station off the road a bit somewhere. So, food for thought. Don't expect any answers now, but...
That's your question, is it, Councillor Bramage?
Yeah. Through Deputy Mayor, we'll take that on notice and, workshop that one, I reckon.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Another question?
I actually think it's a really good idea to have a significant trees register, so I'm wondering whether we could actually have a workshop and discuss that further, because I think that's a really good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Are there any further questions from the councillors tonight? Okay, moving on to item 8, notices of motion. We have none listed, none received. Item 9, reports of officers and committees, the mountain bike trail feasibility. The recommendation, there are 2 parts to the recommendation: that we note the information contained and provide in principle support to explore the feasibility study. So could I have a mover, please? Councillor Courtney moved, seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Courtney, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I'm not a real big speaker on things that we've gone over, and I think has been out pretty open that we'd like to have these tracks. I think that this is a good idea for our area, and it can bring tourism, broaden tourism into our area, into events that we don't currently hold. I think that it's shown that in other areas they've got a great increase of tourism from their mountain bike tracks, and I think that this is something that we need to look into, and we need to look at the feasibility study, because we need to seriously consider the risks that also go along with creating this sort of bike track. So I think it's a good idea that we note the information and we provide support, but that we do give future consideration to this and don't just straight up support it without actually understanding the risks involved, because they're risks for ratepayers, not just for councillors or event organisers.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the motion? Are there any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Hyland?
Yes, I'll have a go. Thank you. There are endless opportunities with this proposal, and probably the priority out of that for this to keep the mountain bike thing sort of on the radar is that obviously we need a bit of a groundswell from the community. If we get we'll sort of act on that, but to talk to Circular Head and sort of get the proposal sort of in principle down the track, it's going to be something that'll go on for quite a number of years. But one of the key points with having a mountain bike track is the fact that you have to have the mountain bike track and the accommodation virtually side by side for it to work. All those bikers, when they come into town, they don't want to have to get up in the morning and spend 2 hours to travel to hit their track. And we've got the ideal situation, I feel, in Wynyard with the accommodation. And if we extend that, we've got the rail link, we've got the basis for the track. And if we have a look at that Aldina one to start with, there's a big opportunity there. So I think we need to sort of get some information out there, or get some, where we can have some feedback from the community. And it'll be a goer.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. There have been no speakers against the motion. Councillor Bramage, what would you like to add to our debate?
I'm not going to throw a spanner in the works. I'm going to speak for the motion. And I don't disagree with Councillor Hyland. I think Aldina should be the first port of call in what we can do up there regarding the forestry roads, because it's a pretty big area up there, so I think that should be the first port of call there with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? No one's against the motion. Carried unanimously. Moving on to 9.2, Local Heritage Register. There are two parts to the recommendation: that we endorse the development of a local heritage register and invite the Historical Society to a workshop with Council prior to the end of the financial year to seek feedback on development of the register. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move that.
Councillor Edwards. Could I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Councillor Hyland. Councillor Edwards, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bramage, would you like to?
I'd like to ask a question, if I may.
If you may, yes. You may.
Some years ago, I can recall a book we had, a heritage listed book with heritage properties and that sort of thing. Is that correct? So that is still a valid document? I don't know what the...
I'm nodding. Yes, thank you, Councillor Bramage. Some years ago, and I think it's over 10 years ago, that Heritage Tasmania did an assessment of the buildings, what they considered could be heritage buildings within the Waratah Wynyard municipality. What they found that there are very few that could be listed as heritage buildings. However, when we consider heritage as being discussed within the notes for this motion, you find that we are starting to look more broadly than just old buildings. And certainly Waratah itself is a heritage town, and I think that it's a great place to start in documenting the culture of Waratah, the culture of Wynyard, the culture of Somerset, if you like. So I think that it really is important that we push this through. But that document is still held here at Council.
Yeah, we'll probably refer to that a bit, I guess. Yep, thank you.
Mrs. Bradley, did you have anything to add to that?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to follow on from Councillor Bramage's comments, there will be a whole range of sources of information to bring that register together. So we already have a register of memorials within the municipality. We also have things that are listed with the Tasmanian Heritage Register, and we, as in the motion, we will talk to the Wynyard Historical Society and other museums in the municipality about other things and places that would also go onto that register.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradley. Councillor Hyland, you wish to add?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think like we've workshopped this, and obviously we're going to bring the Historical Society on board because we don't really need to create another group. They're doing a fantastic job down there, and I think if anyone hasn't been down, they need to get down there and on a Monday afternoon and just see what they're actually recording and the filing and the work that's going on there. And I'm sure that they can sort of virtually take control, really, and operate that under a little bit of guidance and some assistance if they need it, financially or material or whatever they need to get it up and running. And they need the strong support from Council, and it'll be done.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Are there any more speakers for this motion or against? On page 51, the risk implications are there is a risk that if a local heritage register is not developed, there could be significant heritage assets that are not recognised for their community value. This could lead to loss of significant heritage in the municipality, which can lead to a loss of community connectedness and civic pride. As there are no speakers against, As there are no speakers against the motion, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Moving on to item 9.3, review of the dog management policy. The recommendation is that Council undertake consultation on the dog management policy. Could I have a mover, please?
I move with that recommendation.
Councillor Edwards is moving. Seconded, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Edwards, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes. Yeah, it's been good since Mrs. Raw came in and put her motion up in November, and it's been great that they've been able to work in the working group for all the fors and against. And even though they probably don't like some of the outcomes, I know that, you know, they've sat through some good times of talking it all through. I look forward to reading Mrs. Raw's data that she has sent through to us, and yeah, I'm happy for the policy to proceed to community consultation and see what comes out of that.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Are there any more speakers for the motion? Councillor Courtney.
I'm just going to say that we need to support the motion because this is what we said we were going to do. So I don't think it's appropriate for us to now change what we're going to do because we've had the discussion between the two groups, because while I acknowledge that that's what was requested and we've had that discussion now, it's not just those two groups that this consultation needs to go out to, it's everybody in the community. So I think that we need to proceed as we're doing because that's what we said we were going to do.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Bramage.
Well, just taking what was said earlier tonight, I guess, dare I say it, the community's probably had a fair old crack at this, that's got dogs and don't want dogs on the beach and that sort of thing. And I'm half inclined to suggest we make the decision tonight on what we heard earlier, rather than go out and go through the agony of it all again. But I'm happy to, they're only my comments, I'm happy to go along with the majority. That's it, I wouldn't have a problem if we made the decision tonight properly.
So, Councillor Bramage, are you speaking against the motion?
I haven't decided yet. I'll tell you when I vote. No, I'm not speaking against the motion, no.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just to point out that under the Dog Control Act, we have an obligation to invite public submissions against any dog management policy. So you have no choice other than to go out to public comment.
Well, I'll have to be quiet then, won't I?
Thank you for those comments. Are there any more comments for the motion? Councillor Bradley.
Yes, Mrs. Mayor. I'd like to see a review of the Dog Proposal Act, and I like Mrs. Raw's proposals as well, so I think we should definitely go and have a review of the Act, or the whatever it is.
So, Mrs. Bradley, Councillor Bradley, are you speaking for the motion or against?
I'm speaking for the motion.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers for, against? Obviously not. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. No one's speaking. No one's voting against. Carried unanimously. Item 9.4, Waratah Weir and Bischoff Reservoir Dam. We have a recommendation before us with 5 parts. Could I have a mover of this motion, please? So moved by Councillor Courtney. Could I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Councillor Bramage. Councillor Courtney, would you like to speak to the motion?
Every time I hear dam and Waratah, I get a sweat on the back of my neck. It makes me so nervous. I think that tonight is only about noting what's in front of us. So I don't think there's a decision to be made. I think we're all aware of the issues there, and tonight is just to note what's in front of us. So I don't think that needs further conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Are there any more speakers, please, for this motion or against? Councillor Bramage.
Yeah, I'll speak for the motion. I guess it highlights here what we've done in the reports and all that. I think council's done everything they possibly can. Taswater obviously going to repair the weir, and I believe that we've got to encourage them or tell them that they've got to take possession of it then. It's no good of Taswater coming along and saying, we want this, we want that, and we don't want that. There's no good in doing that. They're the water people. So they've got to get, be a bit careful what I say here. Yeah, they've got to get organised to take responsibility for everything regarding water. As simple as that. And I think we've got to go hard to get them to do that, and I'm quite confident that the General Manager can do that. But as it is now, it's no one's game. But council have spent a lot of money in getting these reports for no gain. It's figure of speech, where Taswater are going to get the gain. So we've got to force their hand in them taking over it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. Councillor Highland.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, look, this is it's an ongoing project, and look, the report is there for noting, and I think this is going to go on for quite a while, because obviously it's like doing a job and getting warranty. There's a lot of work's gone on up there, and now we're coming into the first winter with all the works. So it'd be in everyone's best interest that we see how it's going to stack up. We can't just say, well, yeah, we'll accept that part of it and we'll back out. But Taswater's in for the long haul, because what Councillor Bramage said, they've got to take full control of the water sources and everything else. So they're going to make sure it's right. So I think we just need to note it and just stand by for the next report.
Thank you, Councillor Highland. Are there any more speakers for the motion? Any speakers against? As there are no speakers against, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. Item 9.5 is the Yolla Drainage Report. There are 3 parts to this motion, and I ask for a mover of this particular motion, please. Councillor Courtney has moved. Councillor Highland has seconded. Councillor Courtney, would you like to speak to the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Highland. Do you have anything to add?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, not much has changed since I played up there about 30 years ago. The ground's still in the same sort of condition, pretty wet and muddy. No, it's good to see that there's a few things happening there, and once we get all the information in, and obviously point 3, we've got to consider some external grant funding, so it's all going to take a little bit of time, and the summer will be upon us, so we can make a decision with all the information on board.
Thank you, Councillor Highland. Are there any more speakers for or against this motion? I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
No one spoken or, voted against. Passed unanimously. 9.6 is the Energy Saver Grant application. The recommendation is that Council endorse the allocation of Energy Saver Grants program funding to Business Northwest for the Table Cape Light Show experience in the amount of $12,500. Could I have a mover for this particular motion?
Yeah.
Councillor Bramage?
Yeah, I'd love to move it.
Okay, you're moving. Could I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Edwards, Councillor Bramage, would you like to open the debate?
Thank you. I don't know whether anyone's seen it or not, but I have seen pictures of it on Bookface or something like that, and it's brilliant. It is fantastic what it looks like. And if we got to pay $12,000 or $12,500 to get something to look like that in a municipality, I reckon we've done well. It is really brilliant, and I don't say that about many things, but it's a job well done.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. Are there any more speakers to the motion? Councillor Courtney.
No, I'd just like to say that this is a great idea, and I'm just glad that after we only had a couple of submissions for the first round, that we've actually now found another business that will benefit from this round of funding, because this is a really good project, and I think this is really good for our area. It's so progressive, so I think that this is fantastic that we were able to find another business that could do a lot for our area with this Energy Saver grant, because this is a really good thing that's come out of ISEP.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. It's a great collaboration. Councillor Highland, were you wishing to speak or?
Yeah, I'll have a go now. Got me live. Yeah, it certainly is, and it's just another one of those projects that the Waratah Wynyard Council is forging ahead with, and as you'll see on the agenda later on tonight, we have a car park tender to go out, which is at the Lookout. So it'll all start to enhance that, and I think there's going to be room for 4 or 5 tourist buses there at any one given time. So, yeah, bring it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Highland. Councillor Bramage, you wish to add?
I've just got a question, if I may.
You may.
Now, the road into the lighthouse, does the gate still get locked on that of an evening? Can anyone tell me that, or because I don't know?
Through Deputy Mayor, I don't think it has been regularly for some time.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Thank you.
Mr. Bramage, did you want to add anything further to that or not?
Yeah, let's take the gate off, because don't get them to light you up there if we got the gate locked.
That's a fair comment, Councillor Bramage.
But I don't know how we go with that, because we had to put the gate on there because the Vandals was up there with Lighthouse, what's the right name? Lighthouse people, owners, encourage us to lock it up. So I don't know how we go with that.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor, the proposed light show, if you like, on the lighthouse will involve projectors. The projectors won't stay on site, so they will be, if you like, put into position and removed before and after each show. And it's likely that each show will be a ticketed event, obviously with COVID still around to limit numbers and so forth. So there will be plenty of control measures to cover the points you raise, I think.
Thank you, Mr. GM. Are there any more speakers for this motion or against? No one has spoken against the motion. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. 9.8, COVID-19 Economic Recovery Plan.
9.7.
9.7, have I missed one? So I have. Thank you for keeping me on my toes. 9.7 is the Future of Local Government Review, Stage 1 submission. The recommendation that Council note its submission to the Future of Local Government Review.
So moved.
Councillor Courtney has moved. Could I have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Edwards.
Second that.
Councillor Courtney, please begin the debate for
I
us.
won't talk too much on this because I think it's fairly well known that I think it's a bit of a farce and it's predetermined. But I would like to say that the workshops that we've had and the response that our General Manager has given is just top quality correspondence that really encompassed what is best for our community. The submission that our General Manager Shane Crawford has put in is an exceptional submission. It's very well worded, and it basically really tries to make sure that we look after our area and we don't lose our local representation through what I believe is a state government move to try and get rid of some of the local councils. I don't disagree with the idea that some councils should not be here, but I do disagree with the way that this is seemed to be rolling. And I would just like to say well done to you, Mr. Crawford. That was a very, very well written submission to this local government review. Thank you very much for the work you did on that.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Hyland, do you have anything you wish to add?
Thank you. Yeah, interesting, but I think as usual, the Waratah Wynyard Council has gone about it in a sensible way. We haven't gone out there and with like every other council on the coast, looking for a bit of a land grab and moving boundaries and trying to come up with all the solutions. And just without saying too much about it, but a couple of points that we did put in our submission, that we wanted to ensure that our service levels were maintained, local representation, as Councillor Courtney has said, maintained, and the financial status of the community is strengthened. So, you know, we're just sort of looking at the basic and thinking about our community.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Does anyone else have any comments they wish to add? I'll add a couple of my own. Councillor Courtney has said that she finds it a difficult process for us to grasp, and certainly with the elections for local government in October, this process won't be finished. And so we will be working within a void. My concern is that the committee that is looking at reviewing local government, there is not one elected representative on that committee. And I don't think that that bodes well for local government at the moment. I'd like to know more, but I do think that there should be a lot more information out there, and there should be a lot more collaboration with the councils, despite having pop-up shops or whatever they call them, and some surveys and a couple of meetings for some of us to attend. So I do think that we need to keep a watch on this particular process, because I think the outcome is going to be something different to what we maybe are hoping for. Okay, so if there are no speakers against this particular motion, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. Now we'll go to 9.8. Thank you, Councillor Courtney. COVID-19 Economic Recovery Plan 2021-24 Annual Update. Could I have a mover for this motion, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Hyland has moved. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Courtney. Councillor Hyland, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Well, I can just start it off anyway. But the actual COVID-19 recovery plan, as it was, I don't think there'd be a council in the state that could come anywhere near close to what we've actually done for our community. Right from day one, with plenty of opportunities with grant money. We looked after them with the free tip, a lot of things, and now that's continuing to go on. Yeah, anything that sort of came up, council was right on top of, and yeah, it speaks very highly of our staff and the way they went about it.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Are there any more speakers for this motion? Councillor Courtney.
No, I'd just like to reiterate what I said last year, that this council's done exceptionally well during COVID. We adapted to online meetings. We adapted to video meetings so the community could see what was going on. We did what we could for our local businesses, and we did what we could for our ratepayers, and, you know, ensured no lift in rates, and that was for 2 years running. There was a minimum increase for our ratepayers, and we were still able to go on with major projects, which gave lots of people in our area employment. And I think that that's a real coup for this council, that they've done so well through such a difficult period, and that you still manage to come to these workshops and show us that we are still tracking well financially, and we are still tracking well on all the projects that we're doing, and we have so many with so few staff. It is such a credit to you. So just again, another pat on the back for how well you handled this pandemic.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Bramage.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to speak against staff and councillors a pat on the back for what we had to do with our online meetings. And staff was running at a very minimum here. A lot of the times, 1 or 2 people, but we still managed to get through. And probably one of the biggest things that came out of me, I learnt to use Facebook and my iPad because of COVID. And Teams meetings, yes. So, if you could say that was a good thing to come out of it, sometimes it's a bad thing though. But no, I think we're going fairly well. We're trying to look after our ratepayers the best we could with a 0 rate increase there 1 year. And a free access to the tip, as Councillor Holland said, that's still continuing. And I say well done to councillors and staff.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. Are there any other speakers for this motion? No speakers against the motion. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 9.9 is the Central Area Development Strategy's annual progress update, and the recommendation is that the council note the progress of the projects recommended under the Central Area Development Strategies. Could I have a mover of this motion, please?
I'll move the motion.
Councillor Edwards, could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hyland. Councillor Edwards, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hyland, is there anything that you would like to say?
Someone else should have a go. Thank you. Yeah, it's probably a recommendation that I'd make is the members of the gallery that are still left here and anybody else from our local community needs to really grab hold of this agenda and have a little bit of a look through it and have a look at some of the projects that are sort of mentioned in all throughout Wynyard, Somerset area. And we are looking after Somerset. If you have a look through there and see what's down there for the future, there's work on the IGA potential, all sorts of things. The Somerset Ply Mill, there's just too many there to list. So I'd just like to suggest that they get on that, have a look. If there's any queries, get on to your local councillor and they'll certainly fill you in with some details.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Are there any more speakers for this motion? No one spoken against it. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 9.10 is the Footpath Infrastructure Service Level Document Review 2022. And the recommendation is that Council adopt the revised Footpath Infrastructure Service Level Document 2022. Could I have a mover for this motion?
Madam, I'll move.
Councillor Bramage has moved. Could I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Councillor Courtney has seconded that. Councillor Bramage, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly, yeah, look, I wasn't happy with how it was, but I'm happy now that councils took responsibility of the curb, but I wasn't happy when they put that onto the ratepayer. So that's as far as I'd like to go without going on and on and on, but I'm quite happy with the responsibility being come back onto council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. Councillor Courtney.
I just think this is further credit to the engineering department and council in general that we're getting our service level expectations in place so that the community knows what they can expect from us. And I think it's a good thing that our asset management has got such a great understanding, not just internally, but you've given that knowledge to the rest of us councillors. So we now can identify that this is one of our assets and this is a service level that's attached to one of our assets. So that knowledge for us, I can now look at this and understand why that this is a really good thing to tidy up our service levels and our asset maintenance. So good job on teaching us councillors about things that are not very interesting most of the time.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney, for clarifying that. Councillor Bramage, not Bramage, sorry, Bradley.
Yes. Look, I'd like to say something that The service aim of our footpath assets is to provide safe pedestrian access in all urban areas other than industrial. Now, does that include the tactile pads for the blind people as well? Is that included in this or not?
Mr. GM.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, the tactile surface indicators are referenced in this document.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. Yep.
Councillor Edwards, would you like to comment?
Yes, I thank you for the visuals that this report or the adoption in this. It's pretty self-explanatory for people in the community, and it shows who is responsible, whether it be council or landowner.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers for this particular motion? There have been no speakers against. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 9.11, road name change from Phoenix Place to Phoenix Circuit. The recommendation is that the council endorse the proposed road name change from Phoenix Place to Phoenix Circuit. Could I have a mover of this motion?
I'll move that motion.
Councillor Edwards has moved the motion. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Councillor Bradney has seconded. Councillor Edwards, would you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, it's just pretty straightforward, really, moving it from a place to a circuit, because it's going to be a drive-through now, so rather than a, what is it, cul-de-sac?
Thank you. Are there any other councillors that wish to speak to the motion, please? No one has spoken against the motion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 9.12, quarterly information report, community and engagement. Could I have a mover of this particular motion?
Moved.
Councillor Courtney, could I have a seconder?
Second that.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Courtney, would you like to speak to the motion?
I just think, again, Councillor doing a fantastic job in this area. I think these workshops where we go out and have the community conversations was a fantastic idea, and I think that's actually playing into how we're getting higher statistics in our community engagement, because the word's getting out there that we're out there and listening to them. And again, I'd just like to congratulate Council on the engagement they're doing online. I'm surprised when I see the reports, well, I shouldn't be surprised by now, that we're really holding our own against some of the biggest councils, and to find out that we were right behind Launceston on community engagement online. I just think it's a real credit to you guys that for such a small council, you just keep producing such big results. So, good job.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Are there any further comments? Councillor Highland.
Just a repeat of one, I suppose, which should rate another mention and should be mentioned as many times as we can, and that is that we've got the best tourist information centre in Australia, and we should be proud of that.
We certainly do. Thank you for bringing that up. I'd also like to mention on page 112, Youth, the International Women's Day bursary, which I funded personally to the tune of $500. The successful applicant was Holly Berkery from Sisters Creek, and she was so delighted to receive that award. I gave out that award with Councillor Edwards and Councillor Courtney, and Holly was, she just could not believe that she was given an opportunity to have her career funded. So it is a great outcome. So if there are no more speakers for or against the motion, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 9.13, the quarterly information report, infrastructure and development services. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Courtney, could I have a seconder?
Second that.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Courtney, do you wish to talk to this motion? Councillor Edwards, do you have any comments that you wish to add?
Yes, reading through the report, they had the photos in there of the new barbecue or the where you sit and that at the Somerset Cam River Reserve, so that just looks fantastic and very inviting for families and friends who want to go there.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Are there any further comments that or queries? Councillor Bramage.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on the barbecue shelters at Somerset. Fantastic. Well done, guys.
Thank you. If there are no further speakers for or against, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. 9.14, Quarterly Information Report, Organisational Performance. Could I have a mover for this motion, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Edwards has moved. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Hyland has seconded. Councillor Edwards, would you like to speak to this motion? Councillor Hyland, do you have anything that you would wish to? Are there any speakers for this motion, please, or against? Is there a Councillor Bramage?
Thank you. Sorry.
Don't apologise.
I'm just looking on page 137, addressing. We got some new roads coming into new names of roads coming into our system, haven't we? You know, that we're going to have to learn where they are and that sort of thing. I've probably asked this question before. I guess is greenfield changes and brownfield changes. What? Excuse my ignorance. Could someone help me out?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Greenfield changes are new streets created as a result of subdivisions and the like. Brownfield are adjustments to existing streets.
Right. Yep. Everyone must have knew that except me.
Thank you, Mr. Searle. I didn't know it either.
Well, you did not.
Thank you for asking, Councillor Bramage. Are there any other speakers to this motion or questions on this report? If there are no further comments or questions, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 9.15, the award of a contract 778 Bassett's Road Bridge replacement. There are two parts to this motion. Could I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Bramage.
Yeah, I'll move as a recommendation states. Thank you.
Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hyland. Councillor Bramage, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I'm quite happy with the recommendation. I'm not an engineer, so I can't talk too much about it.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Courtney, are you wishing to add comment?
No, I was just noting that it says at risk of failure, which means I think that we need to take the recommendation to fix it.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney, for bringing that up. If there are no further speakers to this motion, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. 9.16, awarding of contract 772 Yacht Club Pontoon and Boat Ramp. There are two parts to this recommendation. Could I have a mover? Councillor Hyland.
So moved.
Could I have a seconder?
Second that.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Hyland, would you like to speak to the motion?
Certainly would. It'll just the final missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle on the yacht club site, and this will allow the little yachties of the yacht club to actually get their own little tubs in the water without mingling with the fishermen on the main ramp. So it'll just take all the heat out of that area, which will be a good thing, and they'll be right down in front of the yacht club under everybody's watchful eye. So yeah, certainly it'll be a finishing touch to a magnificent project.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. You've raised some good points there. Councillor Edwards.
This will be a welcome addition finally, and thankful for the additional funding for this project to be completed. This will be a welcomed addition for the safety and for future events for the smaller boats and the yacht club users.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Bramage.
I just got a question, if I may. When's the project expected to start and complete? Is there any numbers on that?
Mr. Summers, if you could respond, please.
Through you, Deputy Chair, the contract has a practical completion expectation of end of September this calendar year to fit with a planned event. The start date, I understand, is design and so forth would be upon award of the contract. I don't have a date for site works, but completion is expected prior to end of September.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments or questions on this particular motion, please? Councillor Bradley.
Yes, Mayor, I just want to know, has there been a name to this yacht club yet, or is it something that's going to give us a surprise when we open it?
Councillor Bradley's question I shall pass on to our General Manager.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, it's not entirely relevant to the matter before Council at the minute, but no, the naming hasn't been determined. Obviously, we've gone to community, get some community feedback, and that will need to be brought back to Council in due course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Councillor Bradley. Are there any more questions or comments in relation to this particular motion? If not, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. 9.17, the financial report for the period ended 30th of April 2022. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Courtney is moving the motion. Councillor Edwards is seconding. Councillor Courtney, do you have any comments or questions? Thank you. Are there any... Thank you for that addendum. Are there any further comments? If there are no further comments, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. 9.18 is the Senior Management Report. The recommendation is that Council note the monthly Senior Management Report. So could I have a mover of this motion, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Edwards. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hyland. Councillor Edwards, would you like to make any comments or you have questions?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. From the floor, are there any further comments or questions around this particular report? Councillor Bramage.
Thank you. Sorry to be a nuisance, but I'm just wondering whether we printed it out like that, whether we could just make it that little bit bigger so it's that much easier to read. Or is that, it shouldn't be that hard, should it, or not? Or is that...
We'll have a look at that, Councillor Bramage.
Oh, well, if we got a fair page here, we can make it a bit bigger, it'd be good, wouldn't it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. I guess that will be addressed for the next meeting. Are there any more comments or questions regarding this report? No? Okay. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. 9.19 is the award of contract 783 Table Cape Car Park expansion. Could I have a mover for this motion, please? Councillor Hyland, could I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Hyland, would you like to open debate, make comments?
Just a comment, as I did point out before, it's one project of a two-part project up there to eventually get our view, loo with a view or destination for a loo, whatever you want to call it. But this is the first stage, and this will be the car park improvements, which will accommodate 4 or 5 tourist buses and a big turning circle, disabled parking, and so it'll enhance everything around that area, ready for the next stage of the project.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Are there any further comments from the floor, please? Councillor Edwards.
It'll just be a welcome addition with the larger car park and actual at festival time with all the tourists and that being able to turn around safely and that.
Thank you. Councillor Bramage.
Thank you. I guess the lookout up there has always been a problem with tourists of getting in there. I don't think the tourist bus could have been in there for years. And just hopefully now, when this happens, we'll get the tourist buses going back up there just to the lookout, and they can do the walk to the lighthouse if they want, or have a look at the boardwalk type things we've got up there. That'd be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bramage. Councillor Hyland, you have your light on. Are you wishing to make any?
No.
If there are no further comments, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 9.20, the award of contract 782, provision of guardrail design, supply and install. There are two parts to the recommendation. Could I have a mover for that recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Moved, seconded. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Hyland, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Yeah, thank you. It's just one of those long-running grant systems that we've started, I don't know how many years ago, with safety guardrails in the municipality, and we seem to drag one or two or three out pretty regular. And if you spend a little bit of time around the municipality, you'll find there's just guardrails going in on every corner. Even the latest, I think I saw Prelina Road, just at the crossroads where Pages Road meet. They're everywhere, so we're really sort of right on top of our dangerous corners and curves and embankments. So yeah, that's another project we'll be able to tick off.
Another positive. Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Are there any further comments from the councillors for this motion? No one has spoken against it. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. 9.21 is award of contract 779, provision of bitumen surfacing services. There is a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Edwards, do you?
Yeah, I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Councillor Hyland will second it. Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak towards to this motion? No. Councillor Hyland?
Thank you. Yeah, and probably the good thing about this, I think, if it comes to fruition at the end, it's been a joint tendering process, and I'm just not sure of the figures now, but if we stand to make another saving at the end of the job, given if Circular had come on board, and by using the one tender to do the both municipalities, which we've done, I think, on numerous occasions with the resealing, which is a good thing. And it's one of those things where they keep talking about these other councils with their resource sharing and whatever, but we've started it and we've continued it and reaped a few benefits in the long term.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Councillor Bramage.
Thank you. Just got a question, if I might. A few months ago, we done a couple of streets round with, I call it a rubber seal. I guess maybe there's another name for it. I just wondering whether the director's got any information on how that went, or whether we can use that more in our situations or anything like that.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor, there was an alternative tender submitted on this occasion that offered the crumb rubber seal that you talk about. Typically we'd seek that if there were areas that needed greater stone retention, or if there was suspect pavement where we needed greater strain alleviation. In the coming round of road reseals, there probably weren't any roads that did warrant that. So in this case, we've recommended conventional bitumen, but the roads that were resealed in the current financial year produced cost savings on the prep work we would have otherwise had to do because of suspect pavement, but the crumb rubber seal was able to be placed across that. So in all future years, that will certainly be an alternative to consider for cost saving and other benefits, including environmental. So.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Go back to that one. So if there are no more speakers for this particular motion, I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried unanimously. 9.22 minutes of other bodies and committees, none have been received. Item 10, matters proposed for consideration in the closed meeting. We have a recommendation that the council resolves by an absolute majority that the matters listed below be considered in closed meeting. Could I have a mover of this motion? Councillor Bradley. Could I have a seconder?
Second that.
Councillor Edwards. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. Closure of meeting to the public. Item 11.